Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? Are we excited? All right. So I'm not going to give a sermon, which is why I'm being a little informal. Hopefully you won't find my sermon on the organ too boring today. But fundamentally, before we start, just to tell you, there are a lot of chairs over here which have been carefully arranged for a close-up hands-on. So I think we'll shift right now or after some time. Yeah, so I'll start up a little bit. All right, so to just add on to why the pipe organ, right? In today's day and age, everyone's talking about something very portable, something which can be carried in your back and connected to a computer. There's AI, right, which does a lot of things, but I firmly believe that there's a very special place for the pipe organ in our worship. So as I was thinking about this and praying about this a few weeks ago, I wrote something which I found very relevant on the organ. And it's there in your notes as well. You can read them when you get the time. The organ for glory and for beauty. So in Exodus 28 verse 2, God commands that sacred garments be made for glory and beauty. When he was essentially talking about the priestly garments, right? Now these words resonate just beyond fabric and thread, right? So anything which is set aside for divine service is just no longer ordinary. It's something really special, right? It's set apart. And that's what I firmly believe, that God would definitely agree that the organ is for glory and for beauty. With its majestic pipes, celestial tones, it's a perfect embodiment from its outward grandeur, intricately crafted casework, as you can see on the absolutely real instrument over here, towering facades. If you're looking at a lot of organs online, you'll see towering facades, and the organist looks so insignificant. And probably that's the truth. The organist is probably insignificant. The music pointing towards the glory of God is probably more important, definitely more important, right? So just as Aaron's garments were set aside for holy service, the organist's role is to reflect the glory of God when he or she plays the instrument, be it a simple hymn or a majestic chorus. As I've learned from my two wonderful teachers God has blessed me with, dear Uncle Arul and late Professor David Sebastian, whether the church is full or they're just a handful of people, the quality, the effort, and the kind of discipline which goes into making that music remains absolutely the same. And I think that's a key takeaway. When 2 or 3 people are gathered in my name, God is still with you. So whether it's one person sitting in church on a rainy day, which has actually happened, by the way, and whether the church is full for Easter, right? Even if it's the seasonal Christian who comes once a year to church, make sure they go back blessed, right? Right. Now, on those notes, on that note, I'm just going to go to the next part of the workshop. So what instrument are we going to look at over here? I'm going to just switch this off. Switch this off. Switch this off. I think we can focus the cameras on the organ. Yeah, thank you. All right, so this instrument is a digital instrument. A digital instrument means that it's got no real pipes. It's all very carefully selected sample sounds. And there are 3 keyboards essentially. So the keyboards are called manuals because historically, you had to manually work the instrument to make it actually sound, right? So the keyboards are called manuals, and the pedal board, of course, is called the pedal board. Now, this particular instrument has got 32 notes on the pedal board. So essentially, if I'm looking at the entire range, I have my low C over here, and I have right up to G. Most instruments in India, when you look at pipe organs across India, will find that they end at F, okay? Now, that's probably because of the time they were built in, okay? I would say that 20th century composers, if you're looking at Jean Demusseau, French composer, if you're looking at George Talbot, who's some of the music I'm going to be playing today, they were quite adventurous with pedal technique, okay? And some of their technique on the pedals is actually extremely difficult. probably as difficult as Bach, right? So those guys, because they were adventurous, they actually pushed up the pedal board just another 2 notes, and actually I'm going to need those 2 notes for one piece this evening, right? Okay, so coming back to the instrument, there are about 65 voices. So now let's look at what the keyboards actually are called, okay? Now, the great organ is also called Hauptwerk. Hauptwerk, and you'll hear the virtual organ software in the afternoon. Hauptwerk means essentially the great, or the the most powerful division of the instrument, right? Right now, I have these pistons over here, but in organ terminology, they actually call stops, okay? Now, you must have heard the phrase to pull out all stops, right? Can I have some yes or no? Thank you. I always like to get some acknowledgement from the audience. So stop basically means when the stop is not engaged, it means that the pipes for that entire rank, okay, are not allowed to sound. So when you pull out the stop, you're allowing the air to flow in, you're allowing each of those notes to be sounded out, okay? Typically, each rank means, for example, if I say I'm going to take the principal, just for example's sake, is on the great organ. I'm going to add another instrument. So from C right up to C, there are approximately 61 notes. So that is called a rank, R-A-N-K. Okay, it's got nothing to do with the first, second, third rank, etc. This is just a rank. Okay, so every single rank is important for the organ because it has a different color. It's got a different set of pitches. Some are low, some are high, and we'll come to that in just a few minutes, right? Okay, so we spoke about 2 things, just quickly going to recap. And if any of you all feel that I have gone a little too over your head, just raise your hand and I will come back to you because I want this to be a little interactive. The keyboards are called manuals. The pedal board is called the pedal board. Notes-wise, 32 notes is the default set of notes for a pedal board, okay? Older instruments in India probably have up to, pipe organs I'm talking about, have up to 30 notes on the pedal board because of the time they were built in. Later on, 20th century composers did a lot of crazy music, and some of them actually used right up to the G. So we talked about manuals, we talked about the pedals. Now stops are basically pistons, the mechanical piston which actually prevents the note from sounding. So why does the phrase to pull out all stops come into being? It comes into being because when you pull out a stop, you're allowing that to sound. When you pull out all stops, you're basically engaging the whole organ. Okay? Now, there are 2 things on this, a caveat on this. If I pull out all the stops, chances are that some of the sounds might not help me, you know, get that really big crowning sound. Just give you an example. So, I'm just going to look at the great organ right now, and I'm going to select a few 8-foot stops, and I'm going to come to what the 8-foot stops exactly mean. Just listen to the sound. I have a principal, which is a little on the louder side. Now I have a stopped flute. This is my principal only. It's adding a slightly mellow tone. So if I want the music to be mellow, I would engage that as well. And if you notice, a stopper basically means on top of the pipe there is something called a stopper which muffles the sound. So it's meant to be muffled and not really sharp. Okay? So let's look at just the principal with the stop flute. Right? And then I have the flute celeste, which is slightly even, which is probably a little softer than that. Right? Now, just to tell you, pipe organs are not tuned 100% to concert pitch. So for example, if I say 440 hertz, all of you all know what 440 hertz is, basically the tuning fork, and that's the A, etc., which is the default concert pitch. Some of the pipes on the organ are tuned slightly lower and some are tuned slightly sharper. So for example, Vox Celeste or Viola da Gamba may be tuned around 437 hertz. It won't be tuned exactly. Now you may wonder, how does that make a difference? Won't it sound out of tune? But yes, the real sound of the pipe organ is slightly raw. It's meant to extend harmonics and overtones, which essentially add to the fullness of sound. And that is why the organ sounds really full and rich, because it adds these extra harmonics. So Let's get down to a few more things now. If I were to say, we're talking about pull out all stops. Now, I'm going to add and show you. So we have the principal, stop flute, not too loud, so I'm going to remove that. I have the viola da gamba, also called the gamba. Not adding too much of bite, so I'm going to go to the octave. Now that is where you get a much brighter sound. And you also are adding higher harmonics on top of the fundamental low frequency. Some more. And then we have the mixture. So just to give you an example, I'm going to engage all the stops. Okay, literally speaking, engage all the stops. Listen to the sound. Okay, so for a final concluding chord or end, that's all right. But if I'm going to do a whole piece, for example, it's too thick, the texture is not thin, the melody is getting muffled and muddy. So what do we do to clean that up? Let's clean that up by removing the 16 foot. Let's remove the softer stops as well and just keep a nice clean bright sound. So just listen to this. Too much of low frequencies, so I'm going to remove the low. Too bright. Slightly better. That's nice and clean. So if I play the same part again, you're able to hear the notes nice and crisp and clear. Similarly, if I play one bit of a fugue, so that's basically how you get the cleanup of the sound. So essentially, pulling out all stops does not mean engaging everything. It means engaging all the stops which help you get that full clean effect. So just because somebody says, okay, the phrase literally, it does not mean literally. It means pull out what is actually helping you. Also, bear in mind that on an old pipe organ like this, if you were to actually engage every single stop, that will put tremendous amount of pressure or load on the blower. So actually, the organ may struggle to actually breathe, right? So, which is probably not the case. You shouldn't be doing that. You should be using a optimal registration to get power, and at the same time, not muddy up the sound and make it too muffled. Okay, good. And so, for the sake of time and making sure that we are on track, I'm just going to go a little faster now. So let's get down to the brass tacks, which is the numbers. So remember this one principle. The lower the number, the lower the pitch. Higher the number, the higher the pitch. The lower the number, the bigger the pipe. The smaller the number, the smaller the pipe. Okay? So let's look at the 8 foots. Okay? So I'm going to do this the analog way. So let's look at the 8 foot. So we have 8 foots. If I play middle C, it sounds like middle C, regardless of any 8 foot. So let's explore all the 8 foots. Principle is basically a slightly louder stop. Now, I can go into the different types of pipe construction, but then we'll be here the full year. Okay? There are so many different types of pipes, etc., over the ages, right? So this is a stop flute, nice and mellow. It's meant to give you like a communion kind of feel. Okay? Flute. Now, this is where the notes are slightly tuned out of pitch. Notice the wavering of the pitch. So when you hear a wavering sound, essentially, it's not really tuned to 440 hertz. It's slightly lesser than that, and sometimes even greater than that. Okay? Why does it not sound dissonant to us? That's something about auditory physiology, which I can tell you later, but not right now. Okay? There's a very good explanation, by the way. All right. Now, gamba comes from viola da gamba, which is basically a bowed or a stringed instrument. So if I use the gamba, I get a stringish-like effect. Okay. Now let's look at the 4 foots. Now a 4 foot, if I play middle C, it sounds 1 octave higher. Okay. So essentially, when I add an 8 and a 4, I'm playing on 2 octaves at the same time. Okay. If I play a 2 foot stop, I'm playing 2 octaves above concert pitch. That is my middle C. So I'm engaging a 2 foot right now. It's 2 octaves higher. So essentially, the easiest way to remember this, 8, 4, 2, okay, is called the principal chorus. Okay. Now, principal chorus typically sounds like this. That's a proper principal chorus. All right. Now, some organs have, including this one, the real pipe organ, have a 16-foot on the grate, which means that when I play a middle C, I'm going to be playing an octave lower. Okay. Okay. Now, one principle you must remember as organists and as musicians are, when you're playing low notes, try not to play heavy chords. If you play heavy chords in the low notes, it muddies the sound. I'm tempted to do a little bit of audiology on you, which is, in low frequencies, our brain is able to detect smaller gaps. So if I take 100 hertz and I give you 102 hertz, you'll be able to say something's different. If I give you 1000 hertz and if I give you 1001 hertz, you'll say I can't hear the difference at all, right? But if I go to 1010 or 1020 hertz, you may say something's different, okay? So on the low frequencies, the lower registers, if you play heavy chords, it sounds muddy, and your brain feels that it's like, I can't differentiate the notes. For example, if I play C major on the highest available notes here. Now, one going down. Okay, it sounds a little muddy, too close. Lower registers don't play too many notes. Mid and high, you can play more. Again, doesn't mean you can play as much as you want. Make sure that it sounds balanced. And if you're not sure, ask somebody else to give you a judgment of how it sounds. All right. Now, there are things called the mixture. Now, a mixture cannot be used on its own. Okay? So I'll give you a classic example of how a mixture can be used. So, now for the upper part. So basically, it's the crowning sound of basically the additional harmonics which are added. Now, if you're looking at the word mutation, it comes from mutatio. It's a Latin word which means to change. So let's look at what it does. Supposing now you've understood 8/4/2. Just again, 8 foot is basically, if you press middle C, it sounds like middle C. If you add 4 foot, it adds an octave higher. This is without the 4 foot. With the 4 foots, with the 2 foots, 2 octaves higher. And now the mixture, which is a crowning sound. I'll explain that a little later. Now, if I take out, for example, a 12th, which is basically 2 and 2 by 3rd, I'm not hearing C. What am I hearing? Anyone with perfect pitch? G? Very good. It's a G. It's a 5th above. Now, there's another mutation called the tierce, which is basically, if I play the middle C, what note is that? Yeah, right? It's very easy actually. You just have to, but it's actually how much, so many octaves, so it will be like, just to show you. So where's C, middle C, where is the E? Right? So if I'm adding the, for example, the 2 and 2 by 3rd, so I'm actually playing a chord which is C, G, and E. Right? Now, you may wonder how on earth can an instrument have that, because it's always a major, it's not a minor. Right? But remember that when you add the major harmonics and you mix them with minors, you get a slight dissonance. And that dissonance is okay because it blends in with the overall perception of the organ sound. Okay? So how can we use a mutation? Just to show you. So we have a 8 foot. We have the 4 foot. 2 foot. Now just watch when I add the 2 and 2 by 3rd. 2 and 2 by 3rd, what note is that? Does anyone remember? I've forgotten already. G. Very good. 1 and 3 by 5th, what note? Doesn't sound dissonant at all. Okay, so how do we balance it? Now, I'm just going to do a small solo. Solo basically means my right hand is going to be playing the melody, left hand is going to be accompanying, and my legs are going to be giving me the low bass. So I think demonstration is better than talking too much of technicality. So I have this combination on my swell. So right now, this is called the great organ, the swell organ, and the choir division. Okay? In real life, only the swell organ has all the pipes enclosed in a big case, and is mechanically moved open and closed by a pedal. So all the guitarists who use the swell pedal owe it to the pipe organ. Okay? Just a little bit of a pun there. So that's basically where it came from. The actual mechanical swell pedal came from the pipe organ. All right? So here's my swell. Now I'm going to try and do a balancing on the grate. So that's a little too loud. So I want something soft and mellow. Right? So if this is my swell organ, I would slightly close the swell. Slightly close it. So how do you balance the texture? You need to make sure that the melody is over and above the waves. So think of a ship, okay, not a big Titanic ship, a small ship, okay, on a lake or on the sea. And as you're going above the waves are kind of the reverberation and the echo which is coming. The melody should always be ever so slightly above the boat. It should never be too low or too high. If it's too high, then what will happen is everything else will kind of get what you call pushed out, and you're only going to hear the melody. So how do we do that? Let's look at the pedal. Now pedal, I'm going to select a 16-foot over here, and I'm going to play it for you. It's low. It doesn't have too much of, you can't hear the note really clearly. So what I'll do is, I will couple the pedal to the grate. When I do that, see what happens. You can actually hear the note much more clearly, but I don't want it so loud. So maybe what I'll do is, maybe I won't couple. Now, the luxury of this instrument is I don't need to couple it to the grate. It's got enough of what you call instruments alone on the pedal division, so I don't need to couple it to grate. So for the time being, I'm going to use that luxury, and I'm going to, okay, so maybe a little softer. I'm going to close the swell box. So remember, the organ does not have touch-sensitive keys. So while the piano is completely different in its technique, and I know most of you all do play the piano, this is a completely different and exciting technique because the sound entirely depends on the instruments you select. Okay? So for example, just to give you, if I'm closing the swell box, it sounds like an echo. Swell box close. All right, so that's essentially the numbers. So let's run through it again. It's there in your notes, so I've sent the notes out. You will get them at the end of the day. Everything which I'm talking is there. So it's something which you can look at sometime later on. Revising this, again, 8-foot is, as it is written, normal pitch. 4-foot is 1 octave higher. What I've written is brightens the sound. And 2-foot adds sparkle. Okay, that's some of the more flowery ways to describe the sound, and of course, the mutations add color and complexity to sound. Now, let's look at the mixture. So the mixture is called the mixture because it is a set of notes, right? Mixed notes. So this one has got 4 ranks. So I actually did the calculation, but then I think I'm not going to go there because it will take too much of time. So a mixture cannot be played on its own. Just see why. So the thing is, if you notice over here, all of a sudden, it goes back. That's called a fallback. Okay, like I said, there's a lot of technical jargon I want to talk to you about, but then for the sake of time, the mixture has. So it's like, hey, what just happened? It's supposed to go an octave higher. It didn't go an octave higher. Similarly, so you're not getting the kind of, for example, if I take, no, that's a 2-foot, sorry, just a 2-foot. This is a more complex sound because when you add a mixture, you're adding the first 1, 5, and then probably 3, and then again another 5th on top of that. So it's basically like a stretched set of harmonics. Each, when you press a single mixture note, you have 3 or 4 different pipes sounding at the same time with harmonics. So it's meant to be slightly out of tune. It's meant to add color. The funny part is, although they're tuned in major intervals, okay, if you play a minor key, it doesn't sound dissonant. It sounds slightly mysterious, I would say. It really does not sound dissonant and have a jarring sound. For example, let's take a Bach little prelude. So if I were to play, okay, I'm going to use a preset for the sake of time. So this is in G minor. So it goes like this, without the mixture. Adding the mixture now. You saw the difference with the mixture, right? Now, when you add a mixture is when you want to kind of heighten the mood, okay? Or if you want to, like for example, say proclaim a big, grand theme, okay? So let's look at a few examples. This is again from Bach Prelude and Fugue. I'm just going to add a few notes over here. So the theme is this. Okay. Now, for a Bach kind of music, what registrations would you use? Typically, you use an 8, 4, and 2, and sometimes the mixture. You can add a trumpet as well, because the Baroque trumpets were available during Bach's time. But then, be sparing. Don't play with the trumpet on blaring all the time, right? Use it sparingly. For example, just to give you the first part of it, so it goes like this. Without the mixture, it sounds nice, okay? But then this is a grand piece. It's one of the great preludes and fugues. So what do? We'll add a mixture and see how the sound changes. Can make out a big difference, again, without the mixture. Nice and delicate sound. With the mixtures involved, another one thing you should remember when you're playing mixtures is when the theme goes right to the bass, okay, you need the mixture. Because otherwise, if you don't use the mixture, okay, so but if I use the, oh sorry, the mixtures are on, so little muddy sound, but if I use the mixtures, you can hear the melody. Sorry. So another thing over here, when you have complex counterpoint music, mixtures actually help you to kind of bring out the subtle melody changes influenced by just 1 or 2 notes. So see, ta, see. So you hear the ta, ti. If I didn't have the mixtures, just see what. It's there but not well defined. If I have the mixture, see. Make sense? Any questions till now? No? All right. So just to tell you a few things, some of the families. So you have the diapasons, and the foundation tones sound essentially like this. It's good for you all to know this in theory. So this is a typical diapason sound. Okay, now looking for all the diapasons here. So we have actually not too many of them, but okay, this is pure, just what do you call? It can be the metal pipes. The pedal stops can also have a diapason which is made of wood. Okay, this is the actual foundation, one of the foundation stops of a diapason of the organ. Okay, you also have the flutes. Flutes, just to give you an example, are gedect. I don't think I have a gedect over here, so I'm going to use some other flutes to give you an example. Okay, we'll do some examples, and of course, the gamba, which is a string stop. So a string stop. Again, it's the construction of the pipe. It's slightly narrower and not as wide as a diapason, so the sound makes it a little compressed, leading to a kind of a stringish sound. Trumpets, brass, have resonators inside, so we won't talk about that right now, but just saying. So that's the families are the pure pipes without anything inside, just the length of the pipe exactly is, for example, 8 foot, that's a proper diapason. If you have a stopped diapason, you got something inside muffling the sound. If you have a narrower pipe, basically with some different construction at the top, it can be like a stringed pipe, or if you have a resonator inside, it can be a trumpet stop, or maybe a tuba. Now, I have, just to show you, we have two types of trumpets on this instrument. One is the real organ trumpet. Another one is a copied orchestral trumpet. Okay, so this is the real organ trumpet. But thanks to clever technology, we have an orchestral trumpet here. Okay, so that is not a real organ stop. It's there on this, but it's not a real organ stop, but I like it as well. So I'm just showing you what's available on modern digital instruments. Okay, now let's look at the pedal division. We spoke a little bit about the manuals. The pedal division, typically you have a 16 foot. Now a 16 foot by itself, listen carefully, you hear 1 octave lower. So 16 foot means if I play middle C, I'm playing 1 octave lower than middle C. So essentially this low C here is right, you hear a rumble. Okay, I've actually played on an organ with a 32 foot stop, with two 32 foot stops, and I played the similar ones, called a contra violin. You just hear a rumble. Here the seat doesn't shake. There the seat actually kind of vibrated, because it's almost close to, I think, 4 or 5 hertz. It's really, really low. So that kind of sound, you can't really hear it, you can feel it. Okay? So let's look at pedal dispositions. So for argument's sake, let's say I'm playing a simple hymn. So any favorite hymns? I'm going to take the, sorry? Diadem. Oh my gosh, I wanted a soft hymn, but I'll come to the diadem as well. Okay, let's do diadem. So diadem, again, it's a beautiful hymn, and it's so important to vary it. It's a mix of humility, and it's a mix of jubilance, right? So crown him, that's where you need to kind of engage something special. What do? Let's look at a very simple registration. Then, so for this, can somebody read the words out for me? It's very important that you play hymns reading the words. If you do not read the words, you won't know what to do where. Okay? Sometimes, you'll be playing jubilantly for a Lent song, and that's not what we want, right? The organist should blend in with the theme. So, all hail the power. 192. It is according to my hymn book. I just brought it by default. So let's look at 192. Where's 192? So the first one is, all hail the power of Jesus' name. Let angels prostrate fall. When you prostrate fall, do you shout with joy? I don't think so. You prostrate fall, right? So this is my interpretation, but you can argue with me, but you better have a good logic. Yeah? So here. Okay, now bring forth the royal diamond. Okay, so always look at the lyrics and then do the registrations. Take for example, sinners whose love can never forget. Okay, all of us are sinners, me probably being the biggest one. But just to give you an example, sinners whose love can never forget the wormwood and the galls. That is something which is kind of it's in humility that we accept that we are nobody, and all that we can do is because of God's grace, right? So how do we reflect that in music? Let's look at 4/4 and maybe the 2 and 2/3, the mutation. Okay, so let's look at the mutations here. I'm going to add the mutations here. That's a little too loud. It has to be mellow. How do we make it mellow? We'll pull down probably just the 4/4. We'll remove the loud stops here. And on my choir division, I'm just going to add, so I'm going to actually play it and show you. It's too loud. So this is coupled right now. I'll come to that, so I won't, yeah. Can you hear this? That's nice and, I would say, reverent. Okay. Now, what about the pedal? One of the very important things while playing the organ is that you need to balance the pedal so that the pedal doesn't overpower what you're playing on the manuals. For example, it's a little too loud, so I'm going to cut off a few things. Okay, so let's look at if you want, you can make it a little softer. Now a little bit more. Go spread your trophies at his feet. So why spread trophies at feet? Why did I go louder there? It's because in spite of who we are sinners. We are going to the Lord and giving him our brokenness, right? So that brokenness is like with confidence. It says we can boldly approach. So now, okay, so you get what I'm saying. And of course, it's very important not to completely play soft all through unless it's a communion hymn, but do a little bit of variation in what you're playing. Otherwise, frankly speaking, people go to sleep in the audience if you continuously play. And one of the things I've been told is that people don't go to sleep because I keep on changing variations a lot. And at least, I think if you get to heaven, St. Peter will say, at least, in spite of your sins, you kept people awake during the service. You know, plus point there. So don't miss out for extra brownie points there. So essentially, try and vary very carefully between even within a verse and within verse. Sorry, for separate verses and even within a verse. Okay. Again, so for example, let every tribe and tongue before him prostrate fall. Okay. So it's raising praise and shout in universal song. And shout in universal song a little louder, and of course the crowned lauder fall. So we can do something like this. So again, again here, I have not engaged the 2/4. I've only engaged the 8/4 and 4/4 to give you a little mellow, not too sharp sound. So now, and shout a universal song, and so on and so forth. Okay, so do the crescendo gradually. Keep in mind again, if you're playing something with a lot of low notes, make sure that you have the higher octaves engaged. Otherwise, when you go low with just an 8 and a 4, the notes are not really heard, right? Same thing for preludes and fugues, especially if you're playing a melody by Bach, etc. If it goes right down, you need the mixture to keep the melody nice and loud and clear, okay? All right, so a few other things. The pedal, let's talk about the pedal. So how are we doing for time? I have to keep watching the time because I want all of you all to have go, and Uncle Arul also is very, very particular that everyone gets a chance to play on this instrument. Okay, so now pedal technique was something I've missed talking about. I'm just trying to wonder. Yes, so essentially, let's take the great organ. How do I add the pedals? Just a revision. No bite, I'm not getting a nice clear bass line. And of course, bass, tenor, alto, and soprano. So actually, the left hand is only doing one, right? Bass, tenor, alto, and soprano. Unless, of course, there are exceptions. For example, if you're doing a stop change, then you can play all, right? So, or maybe like if you're adding additional notes for the final chorus, that's also okay. All right, so let's look at how to get this done. So, sorry. Again, I can add the 2 foot now. Then, the final chorus, Lord of all to thee we raise, with the mixture. To be adventurous with the pedal, you can add the bombard. Okay, that is a little excess, but I'm just trying to show you, if you are not careful, sometimes one part will overpower the other, and that's what we don't want, whether it's him playing or whether you're going to be playing with any voluntary, okay? So, pedal technique, let's look properly at pedal technique right now. So the pedals of the organ are essentially part of the instrument, right? I know with clever electronic technology, you can press a button and the lowest note will play on the pedal without you playing. So you don't want to be sitting like this like an obedient schoolboy. Your feet have to be active. Now, one of the things I have learned from pedal technique is okay, let me turn this way and show you. When you sit, it shouldn't be like this. Your knee should be in line with your toes. Is that clear? The knee should be in line with your toes. So what happens is, it's always slightly back. Okay? Unfortunately, because I'm a little on the taller side, I've had to raise the seat. So seat height is extremely important. Otherwise, if it's too high, what you'll find is you won't be able to gain traction. You won't get control. If you're seated too low, you will find yourself doing this. And the idea is not to play with your thighs. Your idea is to play with your heel and toe. So heel and toe is extremely important. And minimal movement. We'll do a little bit of demonstrations on how to play different types of pieces. Okay. Shoes are important. My apologies because I've not been able to find shoes exactly suited for me, but Organ Master shoes, if you know your size, you can buy them. There's another company called Tic Tac Toe. Okay. I'm not joking. It's actually, they make dance shoes and they make really good organ shoes. There's a guy, I keep forgetting his name, Cameron Carpenter uses Tic-Tac-Toe, sorry. He's a brilliant organist and he plays some crazy pedal solos. So these are two brands you can buy them from. All right? So remember this, pedal technique, never look at the pedals. Okay? If you forget that, remember it again, never look at the pedals. The day you start looking at the pedals, you'll go wrong. Okay? So let me just inspire you with a few pieces and just get one of my books here. So I thought rather than showing you simple exercises, etc., and building on that, I'd rather show you a difficult Bach piece and break it down for you bar by bar, right? All right. And if you think that it's difficult, remember, you just have to be patient, you have to be perseverant, and most importantly, you have to pray. If you don't pray, you can't play. I'm serious, right? Okay, so now look at the pedals. So here we have a Bach Fantasia. This is the Fantasia, and the pedal solo goes like this. So remember, the heel of the right is a 0 on the top. So I think okay, it's okay. I'll show it to you later. Whenever you see markings on top of the notes, it means that the right leg needs to be engaged. An arrow means your right toe on top. If the arrow is below, it's your left toe. Heel is basically like the heel. So some music has a U-shaped marking, which means if it's on top, it's the right heel. If it's below, if it's like in the heel shape, it's the left heel. Lot of music also has a 0, so don't get confused. Sometimes there's a 0 or a U. Older music, you may find a U as well. Okay? So let's look at this. It goes something like this. A nice, so again, semi-detached. In organ music, you have to phrase well, and because you can't actually use a sustain pedal, you have real notes here, you don't have a sustain. Whenever you want to accent a note, you have to hold it ever so slightly more without affecting the timing of the piece. Don't hold it for kingdom come, right? Hold it just a little bit more. So for example, if I play, so what? But yes, somebody's arrived. Let's go further. So I'm holding on the C a little bit more. So the B is again sustained a little bit more. Then, you get what I'm saying? Otherwise, if I played it just note for note, without phrasing it, without accenting those notes. So accenting, remember, hold the note a little bit more. Whether it's on the pedals or whether it's on the manuals, hold that note a little bit more to get that accent and to make it stand out. Again. Now, classic action of toe, heel, and toe. When you play, don't be scared. Play slowly and deliberately. When I say deliberately, don't make it like a little bit of a horse carriage. Just be nice and subtle and what you call deliberate. So deliberate means think that you're going into the note. Don't look. If you look, you will end up doing a lot of, and then eventually the seat will probably start rocking with you. Yeah. So again, when you're phrasing shorter, for example, these are semi-quavers. If you do all muddy sound, so T hum okay. So make sure it's deliberate, it's slow. Think, because in fact, sometimes people look and make a lot of effort over here, but trust me when I say this, the effort comes from here. So think, looking into the notes, always forward, never sit too far behind because your legs won't be able to move properly. Don't sit too far in the front, otherwise you will lose balance, okay? So you have to find that sweet spot, and remember, the sweet spot is when your knees are aligned with your toes. Okay, again, sorry if you can't see that. Your knees should be aligned with your toes. When your knees are aligned with your toes, you're in the correct position. Okay. Initially, you might find some discomfort because, you know, if you don't have a place to rest it, it actually becomes a problem. But with a little bit of practice, with perseverance, and with prayer, it comes. Right? So always remember this is the right position. Right? Now, when you're playing, try to keep your legs close by as like this. Don't keep them too wide apart. What happens is when you keep them wide apart, sometimes you get disoriented. So sit like this, okay? There are some organists who say, you know, keep your knees close together in play. That's not really recommended. Keep them close by, but don't sit like this, okay? Another bad habit many organists have, I'm not here, I'm just generally saying, is to sit on the swell pedal and hop around like this. Very bad idea. Okay? So they're so scared of adjusting the volume, which is why you have to get your stop registrations correct before you start playing. Otherwise, what will happen is, imagine, sorry, you keep on shifting over here, it's a problem. So make sure your settings are proper before you come to the pedals. Right, now let's go on to this. What else can we do? So when I'm doing a heel toe action, remember, always remember semi-staccato is really good for organ because you're able to get the notes nice and clear. It's not like the piano where you need the super legato of Mozart. Okay, this is Baroque music. This is even romantic music, etc. Manuals can be smooth, but the pedal, because of the reverberation, etc., needs to be slightly detached, not too detached. Not no. Then over here there's an exciting section, so it's all the toes, basically the toes. So now here it's even more exciting. It's like an arpeggio. Now there's a third here. So don't be afraid, just play deliberately. Now if you notice, why am I sustaining those notes? To get character out of the music. It's just, so what? But see, again, here. So the B has to be highlighted. Sorry. Triplets now. Drill. Now it is toe, heel, toe. Don't be afraid to drill, it'll come eventually. In fact, I thought, when I was learning this piece a while ago, I realized that Bach was like, okay, fine, I've pushed you to the limit, now let's do a crazy triplet across the entire keyboard, which is actually what he does. So the point of showing you this is to show you how to do the footwork gradually, okay? So here only toes. So then from here it is toe, 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 heel. And then and so on. Okay, so actually speaking, if you break it down bar by bar by bar, it's not that difficult, it's very exciting, right? But yes, be prepared to sweat like this, and we're probably even more, and to actually have a little bit of pain in the thighs when you're starting to kind of get the grip on the pedals, okay? Again, key pointers are, in an organ score, whatever is above the notes, like this, indicates the toe. Whatever is below, if it's round, it's a circle. Okay, sorry. On top, this is basically, the arrow is basically the heel, and if you see the U, it's the toe. Sorry. Arrow is the toe, U is the heel, my bad. And if it's below, it's the left leg, right and left, okay? Starting points, just again, make sure that you have a nice, what do you call, understanding of the melody. Don't just simply play the notes. Otherwise, what will happen is, if you don't understand the melody, you'll get lost in the middle, right? I have to take some time to really understand this before I actually play it. Otherwise, it's just random notes, so you have to know what exactly you're doing, and Bach can be challenging at times. This is tricky. There's another piece which I'll play you, so again, just to show you this again, so pause, break there, break, then heel and toe. Heel and toe again. Break. So it goes on like that. So it's a beautiful, beautiful piece. The name of, you can take the music from me anytime. It's a toccata, adagio, and fugue. Now, one very important thing I want to show you is how to get independence of the hands and the legs so that you can play whatever you like for God's glory without being too brash and being nice and balanced. Okay? So let's look at the notes because I don't want to digress from them too much. I have the pieces set up. So hymn playing, remember a couple of things. Let's talk about hymn playing and then we'll go into the other technicalities and eventually I got a whole set of demos to give you on that, right? So hymn playing should always be supportive. Never overpower the congregation. Unless, of course, some of them go away like lost sheep and you have to bring them back. So I'm just joking, but then on a serious note, sometimes there's a gap, okay? So always remember that you need to have a nice, steady tempo. The moment you show a little irregularity in the tempo, everyone gets disgruntled and sometimes things don't blend together, okay? Another thing is, try avoid doing variations in the middle. I know there are some people here who are good at harmonization, it's good. But when you do that, when the bass is singing a particular line, the bass will be so you'll get some glares from the choir in case you play some different harmony. So stick to the harmony as much as possible, or tell the choir, sing in unison for that verse, and then you do whatever else you want. So supportive hymn singing. Let's look at something soft like a Lenten hymn. So I'm just showing you what I'm going to engage. I'm looking at the grade first. I want something mellow but with a little bit of character. Mellow. I'm adding the 12th, that is 2 and 2 by 3rd. Okay, so what I've added is 2 8-foots, a 4-foot and a 2 and 2 by 3rd. Okay, what note is a 2 and 2 by 3rd? G, sure. Oh, good. All right. Now let's look at this choir division. So the choir division is here. I'm going to do some nice different combinations. Too much. Nice, like an echo. Okay. So this is my choir. And now what do I do on the swell? Let's look at something different on the swell. Or let's add a vox human. It's too sharp, so let's try and, now again, how do you, when something is a little too sharp, how do you balance it and even it out? Listen carefully. I add a lower octave. Not so bad. Or I can add a 4-foot flute. Is too much. Okay, got what I'm saying? Or if you want, you can use the oboe. Good. So let's come to the pedals. Now, couplers. What are couplers? Couplers are, this is my grate, these are my set of instruments. This is my swell, and these are my set of instruments. Supposing I want to play both of them at the same time, I have something called a coupler. So if I have, for example, a grate to pedal, sorry, grate to swell, I'm playing on both at the same time. And if I engage choir to grate, the choir division is very soft, but I still get a little bit of extra sound. Ever so gently. Or if I add a little bit more on the choir, You'll hear that sound, right? Now, what about my pedals? Okay, any hymn suggestions? Somber hymns, not glorious hymns. Anything? Sorry? It is 12 miles. Okay. I need to change the regitations again, but that's okay. Let's look at it. What do we do for the pedals? Let's play. So pedals shouldn't be too overpowering. If I do that, it's too loud, so I don't do that. This is actually okay. So what have I done? I've coupled the pedal to the choir. You understood how the balance is done? Right? So first I select my registrations on the keyboards, then I decide if I want to couple one to the other, and then my pedal should come in, but it should not be overpowering. It should blend in with the music. So if you have a doubt, play a few bars. So let's look at the same hymn again. I can couple both, choir to great. Then I can go softer. Now, see what is. I'm not playing the exact notes because I don't have the notes. I'm just playing extempo. So just forgive me if those of you all who remember the harmony note for note. Yeah, but you understand what I'm doing. So if you want to add a soft, mellow, like a plaintive voice in the middle, you can add that on a separate manual. But remember to balance it carefully with the others. So what can you use for that? You can, if you're here right now, I've used an oboe. So I can also use a vox human. Back again. Okay, that's there. Now let me look at the next section. Any questions still here? Do you have any questions? Right. Okay. All right. So just 5 minutes more. All right, so I think we've talked quite a lot about these things. Now, I'm just going to give you something like a trumpet. So, trumpet voluntaries are one of my favorites, and I think that's because of my late professor, David Sebastian, who used to love trumpet voluntaries, right? So, trumpet voluntaries, there are plenty of them available online, and some of them are by contemporary composers and really good, okay? So, I'm just going to give you an idea of how to do a trumpet voluntary. So, let's build it up from scratch, yeah? I'm cancelling all this, so it's all 0. Where's my trumpet? My trumpet's over here, so not a real organ trumpet, but still it sounds nice. So let's look at the great as the backup. So this manual has my trumpet solo. This is where I balance it out, okay? So for example, now let me see. I can't let the trumpet be alone. I have to add some supporting voice to the trumpet. So listen carefully now. And on top of that, the trumpet comes. Okay? If I add, what I've done is I've added 8 foot and 4 foot. If I add 2 foot, what happens is the high frequencies clash with the trumpet. So when you're adding a trumpet as a solo stop, don't use too much of high frequencies because it kind of clashes a little bit. Don't use mutations. That further complicates the sounds. Unless you want it to be complicated, that's a different story. Okay? But don't complicate it by adding a mutation with a trumpet. Yeah? So for example, let's say, I'll add the trumpet here. So on my great, I need to balance it. what about my pedals? So the pedal is important, not to couple the pedal to the manual which has got the solo. Otherwise, you know how it will sound? It will sound like this. You don't want the pedal, you don't want the trumpet on the pedal. You want the trumpet on your hand. So be careful when you couple that. So I'm going to couple the swell. So swell, let me add some supporting voices. I'm adding 2 8-foots, 2 4-foots, and 1 2-foot. I'm going to couple the swell to the great to give me a little bit more power. What I'm going to do is I'm also going to close the swell box a little bit. Okay, swell box, so. And now let's look at what I can get with my pedal. If I want a little bit more, add quiet. No, I won't add quiet to the pedal. I'll add great to pedal. So I have a decent amount of what you call visibility of the pedal, that is when you're hearing it. Also, the harmony which comes from the pedal and the left hand will come like this. For example, so without the pedal. So the pedal is sometimes the thunder beneath your feet. Yeah? For a little bit of glory, I can add the mixture over here. I switch off the mixture. So another thing is, when you're playing, I purposely played this piece because whenever you're playing 2 notes close to each other, for example, the D, I'm playing with my right toe, and the C sharp above that with my left toe. Always curl it slightly. So, otherwise, clash. So always a slight curl, not like this. Okay? Okay. Just to show you, there are people who have written music with chords on the pedals. Okay? To give you an example, I hope this inspires you to work and play a piece like this one day. That's also a possibility. You can actually play chords. Yeah? Right. Now, coming back to the trumpet. So, I think I won't go into more detail. You've kind of got the concept. Any questions? No? All right. Very important. This piece changed the course of my organ life. So, I would love to share it with you. My late professor, David Sebastian, told me just play this one day. And this is after I played the pedal solo. And I was dying for something bigger. He said, play this. And I'm like, okay. But this really helped me, and I hope it helps all of you someday. This is an adagio. So here, on the upper manual, that is the right hand, we are supposed to use a cornet. How do you get the sound of a cornet out? This is where you actually use mutation. So I'm going to use an 8-foot, a 4-foot, and few 2-foots, and 2-foots and a 1 and 3/5. So basically, just again to give you the idea of the mutation, this is 2 and 2/3. It's a, which note is it? E. And then nice cornet sound. Okay? So that's how all the combinations blend together. Supporting voice on the great. And on the pedals, for the sake of time, I'm going to go a little fast, so I'm going to add the gray to the pedal. So the pedal needs to go like this, and the left hand. Listen carefully. Sorry. So, how does that come with the right hand? See the balance first. Little more of the swell. You understand how the music breathes like that. So this will actually help you if you do the pedal with the left hand, pedal with the right hand. So how the right hand go? Like always play it semi-detached. Now the A to G flat, G sharp. See, G sharp is longer. You understand? So this is basically some idea of how to kind of get the phrasing correct. Okay, and again, semi-staccato is always good if you're playing fast passages from Bach. For example, just give you the. See, I'm not doing that. See? Pedal solo is really nice in this, so I'm going to play it for you. Watch carefully, it's got pretty much all the combinations. So I've selected the pieces in such a way that it builds up from lesser, 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 and this one is a little difficult, but it's not impossible. You understand how important it is to use the semi-staccato in the low register. If I go with that, it's all a mush of sound. If I have the semi-staccato, then I highlight the B, highlight the G. Then again. So basically, I have an anchor. As I'm changing it, I'm anchoring that first note to where I'm going lower, and that's kind of defining the whole character of that section. Okay. So on that note, I think we'll take a short break, and hopefully after that, there are a few things I'll talk to you about him playing, and then I think we'll do the hands-on. Okay. So, Uncle. Okay, welcome back. Just a few things, a small demo before we kind of go to the hands-on. Somebody asked me, how do you look at a hymn and decide what registrations to use, etc. Yeah. Well, so it's an ongoing process. I don't have all the answers, and sometimes I vary things depending on the need. You know, so I'm just looking at. Maybe I should ask the audience, any of your favorite hymns? Sorry? Okay, a lot of favorites here. I think how sweet the name of fairest Lord Jesus and how sweet the name of Jesus. Right? Okay, I'll actually look for the score over here. Just a minute. Just bear with me. This is one of the disadvantages of doing this, but it's okay. We should do this. I'm trying to use the exact score. All right, here we are. So what do the words go like? Let's look at the words. That's important to look at the words. So it is 168. So the words go like this. How sweet the name of Jesus sounds in a believer's ear. It soothes his sorrows, heals his wounds, and drives away its fear. The second verse, it makes the wounded spirit whole. Now that is transformation. So that should be bolder. The first one can be sweet. Okay, how sweet the name of Jesus sounds, as sweet as possible. So let's look at what a sweet sound can sound like on the organ. Dear name, the rock on which I stand is even bolder. Jesus, my shepherd, brother, friend. You're growing closer and closer to Christ, so that's even bolder. Weak is the effort of my heart. I said weak louder on purpose, because you have to drop the volume. Right? Weak is the effort of my heart, and cold my warmest thought. But when I see thee as thou art, a little crescendo there, I'll praise thee as I ought. Now remember, you don't have to change registrations for every single line. If you do that and fumble in the process, I would be the saddest person. So it's okay if you select one registration for a verse and play it, and as you play, you will get inspired, and you'll do a couple of, I'm sure you'll do some wonderful things. So let's look at it in that order. I don't have anything to hold this, so I'm going to use my phone. So the first verse, the sweet tone. Sweet tone, you can use an 8-foot and a 2-foot. How does that sound? Okay, even sweeter. Okay, now let's look at what we can add in the pedals. So I'm going to add a few pedals. Maybe a little too loud. So let me add the swell over here and see if I can cut. That's again too loud, so maybe just the choir a little bit off. And it's important to prepare the organs. So I'm not going to couple anything. The second verse is, it makes the wounded spirit whole. So that again, I'm going to add the mutation, just the 12th. That's the 2 and 2 by 3rd. Okay, so let's look at how it goes. Here we start. Always phrase. Don't do. This sounds a mash of notes. So. Now a little bit more. Now again. So the combination of 8-foot and 4-foot string stops along with the mutation gives a very nice reassuring feel, as you can see here. See? Add a little more character. Now the next thing is rock. Dear name, the rock on which I stand, a little louder. What have I done? I've added 8-foots and 4-foots, but I've coupled all the manuals. So basically everything is coming together. Am I making sense? Yeah. I've coupled all the manuals, 8-foot, 8-foot, and 4-foot. So basically that comes to a nice foundation stop. Again, foundation set of registrations. is Jesus, my shepherd, brother, friend. So what does that mean to you? You have to look at the hymns and ask yourself, what does this hymn mean to me? For me, if I look at this personally, Jesus, King of Kings and Lord of Lords, my shepherd, brother, friend. Wow, that's a lot. Let's add the trumpets. Yeah? So over here we go. Now, weak is the effort of my heart. So, or you can do something like this. What is that I've done? I've added the 1 and 3/5, the tierce. Okay? So again, 8 foot, 4 foot, and directly the tierce. Okay? So without the tierce, see how it sounds. Just the 8 foot and 4 foot. So why would I add the tierce? I'm giving you my logic. Weak is the effort of my heart, but it's still an effort, right? So to crown that effort, a little bit of credit, I will add the tierce. Till then, I would, thy love proclaim. Again, this hymn should not go to forte, fortissimo. It should be at the most like a forte. So I'm going to give you a little bit of forte now. Maybe this is a little too loud as well, but let's just do it anyway. Last line was, refresh my soul in death, which is why I dropped the volume. Okay? Again, I've been playing for many years. I've seen a lot of different choristers, a lot of different congregations, and like my Professor Sebastian used to say, I've survived it all. Yeah. So the key of surviving it all is look at the meaning. Make every stanza personal to you, and you will understand what to do with the music once you understand the dynamics, right? Again, softer reeds can be used. For example, like I showed you this. Jesus, my shepherd, brother, friend. I've only used 8 foot and 4 foots, but if I add a trumpet on top, it sounds really, really nice. So just watch, see? And that's completely different if I add a 2 foot and a mixture. So just see if I add a 2 foot, what happens. And a mixture, even brighter. So I'll cut off the mixture, I'll cut off my 2 foots, and I can use this. And phrase the music well. I think one of the advantages of being pianist is you're taught to phrase naturally. So the organ has to be exaggerated and deliberate. Never over-exaggerate. Exaggerated but deliberate. You remember those 2 words. If you over-exaggerate, what will happen is you feel that you're doing a lot of action but nothing's happening. Deliberate and slightly exaggerated, and you'll be on track. Yeah? Okay, we have just 2 minutes more before we get to the hands-on. What else can I show you? So yeah, just a couple of things with hymn playing. Don't play the whole verse. It's not required to play the whole verse. If you feel inspired to play a nice prelude, you can do that. But remember, it should never mess with the harmony. It should not distract the congregation that they don't know where to start. Okay? So I'll show you what I did on the spur of the moment, and frankly, I like, God help me, because I don't know where I'm going to go from here. I took off an inspired thing of Ye Holy Angels Bright because I love the tune. So don't risk it unless you're sure that you can end it. Yeah. So the tune goes like this. The original ending is I took off on and I got stuck there, but thank God. Get what I'm saying? So you can do a little bit of an improvisation, but let it be meaningful. Let it not throw anyone off pitch. Similarly, when our pipe organ was tuned a few years ago, I was so delighted that I took off on another improvisation. You may recognize the sim, but you won't recognize the improv. Okay, that's it from me for now. And now I think let's do the hands-on. So him playing again, just to summarize. Good dynamics, steady tempo, phrase the melody well. Do not over-harmonize, re-harmonize unless you're leading in or unless the choir is singing in unison. Look at the verses, and each verse in prayer will teach you what registrations to use. Foundation stops 8/4-2, 8/4 trumpet, 8/4 mixture, and mutations always with 8/4-2 and 2/2/3 and 1/3/5. If you want to add little color, 8/4 and then a 2 and 3. All this there in the notes, so you can read it, and hopefully you will be inspired to do something.
Yeah. So now we get on to the hands-on, and this is the priority for the hands-on, based on, as I told you, your inexperience with the organ and the priority in which you registered. So first up, Arul Davidson. Second, Hannah Jane. Then Divya Teresa, Jeffrey Solomon, Preeti Daniel, Nitin George John, Binu Sam, Ashwin James, Sujay Samuel, Stephen Pradik Deepak, Tanmay, Angelo Joshwin, Jessolyn D, and Joel Deva. And yeah, we'll go up to there. So I'll go through the names once again. Arul Davidson, Hannah Jane, Divya Teresa, Jeffrey Solomon, Preeti Daniel, Nitin George, Binu Sam, Ashwin James, Sujay Samuel, Stephen Pratik, Tanmay, Angelo Joshwin, Jesselyn D, and Joel Deva. Okay, we'll go up to there, and then when we finish that, I'll take you to the next priority list. Yeah, before we move on to the next person, lunch is served at the Sake Hall. So those of you who are finished and those who are, senior organists who are not likely to get hands-on time right now can go have their lunch, start their lunch. Right now, when would you like to? Huh? You can go on for a little more time. Yeah. Okay. So next up is Nitin George. Then Vinu Sam is finished. You're finished. Okay. So Nitin George, Ashwin James, Sujay Samuel, Stephen Pratik, Jessalyn, Joel Deva. Yeah. And after that we have Nitin Victor, Aaron Roger, Jaya Godwin. Yeah. So anybody who wants to go and start their lunch, please do so.